What's up YouTube, it's GhostRider15 here, back at it again with another hat format video. That's right, hat format. I haven't put too many hat format videos on this channel, but I really want to start doing some more because lately I've really been enjoying the format. It's a great format in my opinion. So yeah, for today's video, I'm going to be making a tier list of hat format. So without further ado, let's just jump right into the video. Alright, so first off, we have Bujins. Bujins, I think, is a very annoying deck to play against. It's very helmet, but it's also very, very powerful. The deck likes to summon Yamato, protect it with a lot of cards like Turtle, Hare, and it's very hard to get rid of Yamato. Once they have that established, Yamato can just keep searching and dumping cards to the grave, making it very difficult to beat them. Also, they play Floodgates in the form of Kaiser Coliseum, and they have one rank 4 XYZ cards with the Bujin Carnation. And they also play their own version of Honest, so yeah, this deck has a lot. It has a lot. It's not an easy deck to beat. But that being said, it does have weaknesses. Like, it's pretty easy to side against. You have many options with like DNA Surgery, Light Mirror. You have Soul Drain, you have Macrocosmos and D-Fissure, so there's a lot of good options to beat this deck. I would say it's in tier 1.5. Next up, we have Hieratic Ruler, a very explosive deck, very strong when it gets going, but the problem with Hieratic Ruler is it does brick a lot. It's a pretty bricky deck. Anytime you're playing a deck with a bunch of like level 6 monsters, you're not going to be as consistent as like a rank 4 deck in my opinion. And in a long tournament, that's actually going to be a bit of a problem, because when you're playing rounds with like 8 rounds or more of Swiss, it's going to happen where you just end up drawing a bunch of bricks. So I think Hieratic Ruler is tier 2. Alright, so next we have Infernity. Infernity, similar to Hieratic Ruler, is very explosive, but it's actually more consistent in my opinion. The deck has an easier time going off and doing its shenanigans, and once it does its shenanigans, there's almost no way to beat this deck. It gets barrier and break set up, and what are you really going to do about that, The weakness it does have is it's very fragile to hand traps like Maxi and DD Crow and Valor as well. So if they go first and you draw your Maxis, your Crows, your Valors, you should be fine. So yeah, I think the deck is, I would say 1.5. Alright, next up is Constellars. So Constellars is a rank 4 deck that is pretty consistent, but problem with Constellars is that its ceiling is very low. I know Pleiades is a very good card, but other than Pleiades, the deck doesn't have much else going for it. It has that one Exceed monster, I forgot its name, that is a built-in Forbidden Lance for the archetype, but I don't think that's good enough for the deck to be top tier. Even then, it's still not like a deck that at least somewhat tops. I rarely see Constellars do anything in the format, so I think it's a tier 3 deck. Next up, we have Cyber Dragon. So Cyber Dragon recently did well in the Hat Format World Tournament that just happened. It actually won the whole thing, if I'm remembering correctly. And this deck is no slouch. It is definitely no slouch. The deck has the Artifact Engine, which is it has a lot of synergy with the Cyber Dragon engine, and just being able to go into easy rank 5s is very, very broken. And yeah, this deck can OTK at times, and it also has, I think it makes better use of Constellar Pleiades than actual Constellars do. So yeah, I think this deck is a tier. I'm gonna say top of tier 2 for now, but maybe it could be 1.5. Alright, next up we have Evilswarms. So, Evilswarms is one of my personal favorite decks. It's pretty easy to pilot, but despite that, I do think there is some skill to it. Not every matchup is going to be a good match for you, but I do think the matchups that are in your favor are very easy to win. For example, if you're playing against Mermails, Mythic Rulers, those should be very easy matchups for you. And also, what I like about the Evilswarm deck is that it has its own archetype Forbidden Lance, which is very, very strong in this format. In a format that doesn't have Heavy Storm, you gotta find other ways to get through back row. And in my opinion, this deck does it best. You have Thunderbird to dodge back row, Infestation Pandemic to dodge back row, and then you have Infestation Infection to dodge back row. So this deck is like the best deck at dodging back row. And yeah, Ophion is just very powerful. So I would say this is like I want to put it at tier 2 for now, but it has potential to be higher than that. Alright, next up we have Geargia. So Geargia is my personal favorite deck in this format, and it's very strong. It's, in my opinion, the most consistent deck in the format because you have so many starter cards like Geargia Arsenal, Geargia Armor, Geargia Gear, and then some people play the hands, other people play Traptrix Mermailio. There's just so many ways to start your engine, and yeah, I just really like the fact that Geargia Armor can keep resetting itself. In a simplified game state, you can get so many pluses off of Geargia Armor, which is fantastic. And then I haven't even mentioned Geargia X yet, which is another searcher and a floater. So it does a lot. The deck does a lot. And yeah, I would say it's tier 1. Next up, we have Gravekeepers. So apparently Gravekeepers are somewhat of a thing in this format. I've seen some people pilot the deck, and I'm kind of impressed. The deck is strong versus decks that rely on their graveyard, thanks to Necro Valley. And Royal Tribute's always going to be a very powerful card if you're able to get it off. Being able to discard all the monsters in the opponent's hand is brutal, especially in the matchups where the deck is running a high monster count, such as like Lightsworn Rulers or Mythic Rulers or Mermails. So in those matchups, Royal Tribute can be insane. But with that being said, the deck has a very low ceiling, and it's not able to take advantage of very powerful like plays like Soul Charge or anything like that. So yeah, I would say it's like tier 3. Next up, we have Koaki Maru. So Koaki Maru, I've seen a couple people pilot this. It kind of reminds me of Fire Fist in a way because it plays tanky with Beast Warriors. And it also plays a monster. I forget their names, but there's this monster that specials from the deck. There's this monster that adds Iron Core, and it's a pretty good deck. It's not bad, but it's not amazing either. From the limited experience I have playing against it, I've only played against it a couple times. I think it's tier 3. Alright, so next up we have Lightsworn Rulers. So Lightsworns, they're pretty good. Just being able to mill a lot of cards to make the Dragon Rulers live right away is very strong. And this deck can OTK you out of nowhere. But you know, despite its really high ceiling, it does have consistency issues. There's times where you could just brick really bad and you don't have anything to get your engine going. And another problem this deck has is that there's a lot of cards to side for it, like Lightmare macro, Thief Fissure, Soul Drain, you name it. But, you know, despite that, it does top a bit here and there, so I would say it's tier 2. Next up is Madolche. So, Madolche is a deck that is somewhat consistent, but it still struggles despite some of the consistency that it has. Tiramisu is very strong, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's enough to make the deck tier 1. Same with Angeli. I feel like the deck loses very hard to hand traps, especially Maxi. And there's this rank 4 Exceed monster. I'm forgetting the name right now, but if your opponent has monsters with different attack, with a higher attack or lower attack than its original, you can detach a material, pop it, and draw a card, which is really strong against this deck when they have the field spell. So, yeah, I would say this deck is... I would say it's tier 2. Next up, we have Mermail. So, Mermail is very powerful, has a very high ceiling, takes advantage of Soul Charge very well. But the one issue that Mermail has is it can brick on Controller sometimes, which is pretty bad because, you know, you don't want to start off with Controller. That's a card you want to search with Undying. And I guess another weakness that it has is it's very easy to side against as well, like Thief Fissure, Macro, Soul Drain, Debunk. But yeah, it still tops. It's still pretty good. So I would say this one is 1.5. Next up is Mythic Rulers. So Mythic Rulers is another high ceiling deck and takes advantage of Soul Charge really well. And it's one of the few decks that can actually play Skill Drain in the main deck. And yeah, the problem is that it also has consistency issues. And there's times where you're not able to deal with cards like Abyss Dweller. So yeah, I think this deck is, I would say, tier 2. Next up is Spellbooks. So Spellbooks is a deck that is very difficult to deal with game 1. Just because there's so many bad cards against this matchup. For example, Maxi is terrible. Traptrix Traphole Nightmare is terrible. A lot of cards are terrible. Compulse is terrible. Bottomless is okay, but not that great. Yeah, so a lot of the good cards are actually in the side. And yeah, I guess something that keeps Spellbooks from being here like S tier or anything, in my opinion, is that they rely a lot on Tower. If you're able to get rid of Tower early in the game, then Spellbooks isn't that hard to beat because Tower is their grind game. They rely on Tower so much. So yeah, keep that in mind when you play against Spellbooks. But despite all this, I still think the deck is very strong. I'm going to put it in 1.5 tier. It's top of 1.5. Alright, next up is Sylvans. So Sylvans, I think, are a very explosive deck. Probably the best Soul Charge deck in the format. Once this deck gets going with Soul Charge, there's almost nothing you can do to beat it. If they make Felgran, and you don't have like Breakthrough Skill in your grave or anything, then it's pretty much over. This deck also has a lot of draw power. It has its own form of Graceful Charity with Sylvan Charity, which is insane. Like, there's no other archetype that has that type of draw power in this format. So yeah, I think Sylvans are very good. I'm actually going to put them in tier 1.5. Alright, last but not least, I have Hat or Cat, any Artifact Traptrix variant. And this is a deck that I think is the second most consistent deck in the format outside of Geargia. For the reason being is that you have so many like good cards in the opening play. For example, you have Sanctum, you have the hands, you have Card D, you have Traptrix Mermail. So many good cards to get you started. And there's not that many like blowout cards against this deck. So yeah, I think this is another tier 1 deck in the format. Alright, that's my tier list for hat format. Feel free to disagree. It's just my opinions, and these might change in the future the more I play the format. So yeah, let me know in the comment section what you guys think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? If you like this type of content, please like and subscribe. This is Ghostwriter15, signing out.